Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, the DRFBets race of the day for Saturday, September the 8th, race number 10 at Kentucky Downs, one of 4 graded stakes races on the card. It's the Kentucky Turf Cup, and it's a race and it's a card that you can bet with a new DRFBets account. Go to bets.drf.com, sign up for a DRFBets account and receive a 300% deposit match. You might need it for these races at Kentucky Downs because, as usual, as we take a look at the field for the Kentucky Turf Cup, boy, it's a full field full of evenly matched horses. We're going 1.5 miles. It's a grade 3. $750,000 is the purse. You can access free formulator pass performances for the Kentucky Turf Cup on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. Download them, handicap along with us. We'll take the field in post position order. Matt, you still have a bone to pick with Michael Maker about the number 1 Bronson. You think there's one distance this horse wants, and it's way out in Southern California.
I mean, I'd like to at least see it once before it's all said and done for this horse. I'd like to see them sprint him just because we know what Cambio Corsa was capable of doing going down the hill. But to be fair, they continue, everyone, whether it was Maker or Pletcher, they've maintained that this horse clearly is a router on turf. So they continue on with it. Draw a line through the Johns call. It didn't work out. He was basically taken out of that race. I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's a chance where he runs better this time around, but I think he deserves to be the 30-1 morning line.
He's a useful enough horse. He's a stakes winner at Gulfstream going 1 mile and a 16th. We'll see what we get going 1.5 miles, but it's not like really anything jumps off the page with the number 1 Bronson. The number 2 Nessie has also been a rather useful horse for trainer Ian Wilkes. This horse won the San Juan Capistrano. Just another example of an East Coast Midwest horse making hay when shipping out to Southern California. He got a nice class drop. He got a beautiful trip under Mike Smith that day, and he returned home an odds-on winner. I think his 2 races since returning from Southern California, you could give him a little bit of an excuse. I mean, he went 2 miles in that Belmont Gold Cup, and he went against some nice European horses. And last time out in the Stars and Stripes, boy, there just wasn't really any pace on him. He was saving ground near the back of the pack. He finished in 22-4, but so did Cacho Ndie. And Cacho Ndie had 7 lengths on him turning into the stretch.
Yeah, and to be fair, that race has come back pretty useful. I mean, Cacho Ndie came back and earned a 99 buyer. The 4th place finisher was the next out winner with a 93. And Solio, who's also in this race, he came back and earned a 92 in his next start. Nessie's the kind of horse, okay, he's 0 for 2 at Kentucky Downs. That's got to be a little bit of a concern. But at the same time, to be fair, longer distance, this is what he wants. Ian Wilkes has had success down there in the past. You get Leperoux. 15-1. If you think you're going to get the 15-1, I think that might be a little high. I think he's probably in that 10 or 12-1 range. But look, he's interesting as a double-digit price.
He's the horse that just needs a trip, and sometimes he gets it and sometimes he doesn't. You mentioned those 2 prior races at Kentucky Downs. Interesting that both times he drew terrible outside post positions and he was sort of hustled out of the gate. And I don't really think that's Nessie's game. He draws a comfortable inside post in here, and there should be some speed to set him up. Manitoulin ran a big race 2 starts back in the grade 1 Manhattan at Belmont Park. This horse broke from a terrible outside post position, and then he must have been 4 to 5 wide all the way around the track. He was dead game in between horses against some of the better turf horses in the country, and the Bowling Green, I just think he hated the ground.
Agreed. And I think you're just supposed to draw a line through that and take this horse closer to that Manhattan form, a day in which you could make the argument he was actually best there because he was so wide, and the fact that he was only defeated by 3/4 of a length, and we know what some of those horses are capable of on their best day. He can be forwardly placed, and he is another horse. He has not had success at Kentucky Downs, but I think it's worth noting the last time he ran there, that was prior to the gelding situation, and ever since then, that's when he's really blossomed into a decent longer distance horse. So I think you're just supposed to take him basically as a first-timer at Kentucky Downs.
Michael Maker usually makes hay at the Kentucky Downs meet. He already has a couple of winners in 2018. He's got Bronson on the rail. He's got Bigger Picture, the number 4. This horse is a millionaire, only beaten a length in the Bowling Green 2 starts back. He didn't break very well that day. It was kind of soft footing. Channel Maker and Glorious Empire, I mean, they ran really well that day, but Bigger Picture was running at the end, and last time out in the Sword Dancer, I don't know what happened, but it was a really disappointing performance, and I think the way Maker's looking at it is he's drawing a line through it, because he's wheeling this old boy back in 2 weeks.
I mean, I think that's the positive way to spin it. The negative way is the way that I'm looking at it, and I've been a fan of Bigger Picture for some time, but I'm almost looking at that Bowling Green as sort of an anomaly where realistically, go all the way back to the Pan American. When's the last real good race that he ran? You'd have to go back to that John B. Connolly down at Sam Houston. That's a long time ago. I'm not convinced that he's still what he once was at 7 years old now.
Multiplier was beaten less than 2 lengths in that Manhattan and then went to Southern California. I think the Eddie Reed at 1 1/8. I know he won at that distance 4 starts back. Might have been a little bit short for him because he was actually hustled by Martin Petrosa to get close to the pace. I'm not really sure that's his best game. And then when they tried to run away from him on the turn, he kept grinding it out and finished an okay 5th. Last time out in the Del Mar handicap, he came with a big 4-wide move on the turn, but I didn't like how he hopped back to his left lead late. I wonder if he's kind of fizzled at this mid-90s buyer. Maybe it's good enough to win this race.
It's going to be close, and I guess that's the tough part, is trying to project what it's going to take to win in a spot like this. I agree with you. I kind of feel like any one of the last 3 make him a fringe contender in here, but if you take him at the 5-1 morning line, to me, that just seems like a bit of an underlay in a race where I feel like there are a number of contenders.
I wonder if he's the kind of horse that just appreciates the softer ground away from Southern California. Interesting to note that his only turf win came over good going at Santa Anita back in May. The 6 Oscar nominated is a Kentucky Downs horse for course. He won the Dueling Grounds Derby as a 3-year-old. He won this race last year. And I thought, all things considered, last time out in the UN, he didn't really have much of a chance. Fantastic, that big long shot for Chad Brown. Basically wired them and did so on a kind of moderate pace. Oscar nominated tried to come 4 wide on the 3rd turn and he flattened out. But if he runs his usual 99 buyer speed figure, he'll be right there. I almost picked him on top. I ended up picking him second because I saw 7-2 on the morning line. And I think maybe the fans flock to this maker horse knowing he loves the surface.
I picked him second as well, and I think this is sort of what, when you think of Mike Maker, I think of a horse like this, where, you know what, this horse is by no means one of the more talented ones that Maker's ever had, but Maker has placed him in I think all the right spots, and really you look at it and you say, we know we're probably going to get a 95 to a 99 buyer, sometimes good enough to get a piece of a grade 1, sometimes it's not. The good news is he loves Kentucky Downs, he has tactical speed, and I think, like you say, he's coming into this in decent enough form. I think he is arguably the horse to beat at 7-2. I don't know that I would want him, but again, I picked him second.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. They've got the 7 All Right out there on the lead. Now, All Right is cross-entered in the Old Friends Stakes. That's a restricted race for $250,000 at Kentucky Downs on Thursday. If he scratches, it could alter the race somewhat, because second on the pace projector is the 11 My Barrelly, who is not exactly known as a speedster. The good thing is you could visit timeformus.com after scratches and get the updated pace projector, even if All Right runs in this race. And I think you can make an excuse. He had no pace to run at in his most recent start, going 1.25 miles at Ellis Park. There are some class questions. His most recent win came for a $30,000 beaten tag.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's the class or the speed figures, he just seems like he's a little bit light on both sort of accounts. The one thing I will say, even if he runs in this spot, I don't know that I agree that this pace is going to be fast like Timeform US does. I would imagine this is going to be, I mean, look, most of his runs, you're looking at opening quarters and opening halves of 25 and 50. I can't imagine this thing being a barbecue up front. I think they're going to try to rate him and get him to relax a little bit on the front, and then everybody kind of accordions.
But one of his wins came at Kentucky Downs. He paid about $90 in the juvenile back in 2016, so we know he likes the course. Arklow goes out for Brad Cox. You're getting Brad Cox at 12-1, and if you just are betting off this formulator fact, you're going to the window with confidence. 70% winners over the past year with 3 and up turf routers, won their last start, now making their 3rd start off the layoff. Arklow last time out, I have to be honest with you, and I'm interested in your thoughts here. Zapparini, who was entered in that Old Friends Stakes on Thursday, he went right to the front. He didn't set a very fast pace. Arklow was sitting right off of him. I thought Arklow at odds on was just going to go blow right by him turning into the stretch, and he had to dig down for everything just to get his head down at the wire.
Yeah, you know, it's a tough call with a horse like Arklow, because really early on in his 3-year-old campaign, when they moved him to turf, he blossomed and it looked like you were going to have a monster on your hands, and then it just doesn't feel like he's really taken that step forward from that early 3-year-old season form. And now here we are getting toward the end of his 4-year-old form. I think he's a legitimate threat. I think he's a contender in here. Anytime Florent Giroux has a mount down there, you have to take note. Anytime Brad Cox sends a horse out, you have to take note. At 12-1, if you told me that's what we were going to get, I would be very, very intrigued. I kind of feel like this is a name. These are name connections. I think he gets bet a little bit in here.
It's good to know that he's a little bit versatile, because if this pace doesn't exactly shake out, maybe Arklow tries to go to the front and steals this race. Solio, two-back, got a nice trip in the Grade 3 Stars and Stripes. He sat the pocket. He eased out to the two-path. He just couldn't reel in Cacho and Da, who set the pace. Last time out, it looked like John Velasquez was going to settle for that similar trip. And then entering the backstretch the final time, he went out and engaged the leader at about 6 furlongs to run, and he did a lot of chasing that day, and it might have set the race up for a very good Chad Brown horse named Focus Group. Solio did a lot of work. Focus Group won the race. He's came back to win the restricted John's Call with the 100 buyer, has now won 3 of his last 4. I wonder if Solio is the now horse for the maker connections, and he might be the one to try to be forwardly placed.
Yeah, he might be. And like you say, he made that big sort of middle move in that most recent start. And you know what has come from that race? You brought up Focus Group, that run in the Stars and Stripes two-pack. That's a very respectable effort. This is another horse that I think too many people, I don't want to say too many people, I shouldn't generalize. Solio is the kind of horse that it feels like he has a reputation for being an underachiever. You see that he's run second or third 10 out of 20 lifetime starts. I think he might be coming into this in peak form, and that's very, very dangerous, again, going out for Mike Maker and Ken and Sarah Ramsey.
Some in TMA, the number 10, we've been chasing him since he won the Grade 3 Louisville Handicap back in May of 2017. He got injured after that race, missed a lot of time, and since then he's just been playing catch-up. I know there was not a lot of pace last time out for him to run at in the Louisville Handicap, but he was favored that day. It took him forever to change leads. I just expected more. I wonder if he could still run anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame that potentially we could have seen something big come from this horse, and then he ended up going onto the sidelines. And I just don't think he's come back as the same. At 12-1, I would need probably twice that to be enticed.
Guessing Timeform US has my Barry Lace so close to the pace because he's taken a significant stretch out in distance from a mile and a half, and he's been chasing those hotter fractions in those shorter distance races. I thought he got a setup last time out at Canterbury. He came with an okay little run. He wasn't really right there. His usual buyer speed figure is a high 80, and I just don't think that's good enough to get it done.
Agreed. It's just not right at this point. And again, maybe if you think he's going to be more forward, so all of a sudden maybe he's interesting as sort of an exotic threat underneath. But to be frank, he's just not fast enough to win a race like this.
Last year, Big Ben shipped in from Delaware Park to wire the Dueling Grounds Derby. Hasn't shown that kind of speed in his recent starts, but he was the beaten favorite at Delaware last time out, going a mile and a half. And I wonder if Tom Proctor remembers what happened last year, doesn't think there's a lot of pace. He's got the hottest jockey arguably in the planet in Drayden Van Dyke. Maybe Mike Smith's the other one. And Van Dyke's back aboard for the first time since this horse won the Sycamore. He's 2 for 2. Maybe he sends Big Ben.
Yeah, I would expect him to be more forward anyway than what we've seen in each of the past two. And then, that Cape Henlopen, I understand he was defeated as the 2-1 favorite that day. The third place finisher Utmost, he came back and won a stake up at Woodbine with a 97. So I don't think you want to totally hold that race against him. The sixth place finisher even earned a 98 buyer. So I think Big Bend is a little bit sneaky in here. If I'm looking for a big price, I think he may be one to consider.
I wouldn't argue with anyone that can make a case for one of the 4 also eligibles in this race. We won't talk about them right now. Patterson Cross certainly has got credentials. Bandua just finished 3rd in the Grade 1 Secretariat, a race that was faster than the Arlington Million. They got to draw in. They need a couple of scratches. Let's take a look at our top picks for the Kentucky Turf Cup. If there are changes, we might make our changes on Out of the Gate, where we'll cover this race with our good friend Mike Beer. You like Manitoulin. He might simply be the class of the race, other than bigger picture.
Yeah, and I just want to draw a line through that Bowling Green, because I kind of look at it and say, I think he hated the soft turf like you had made mention of. And if you look at that Manhattan, simply put, if he runs the Manhattan, I think he's just going to win. I think he's better than these horses with the form that he's in anyway. It'll be interesting to see what you get for a price. 6-1 on the morning line. I would be interested in that. I don't think I'd go any less than that, because it is Kentucky Downs and there's no guarantee that he's going to take to it. I maintain that he's not the same horse that he was when he tried it the first time around, but again, I wouldn't take any sort of real short price in this race. I would take him at 6-1 or better.
I don't think Nessie's last 2 races are as bad as they look on paper. I think the Belmont Gold Cup was a little bit too far against some legitimate European competition. In the Stars and Stripes, he just didn't get a pace. And as Matt mentioned when we talked about him, that race has come back really, really live thus far. A couple next out winners and Cacho and DA's 3rd place effort in the Arlington Million. He just needs a little bit of a trip. He picks up Julian Leperoux, 15-1 on the morning line for Nessie. 2-6-5-4 for me. Give me numbers again.
3-6-12-2.
It's the Grade 3 Kentucky Turf Cup. It highlights a big day of racing at Kentucky Downs on Saturday. Bet it with a new DRFBets account. 300% deposit match is mind-blowing. Bets.drf.com, deposit 50, bet with 200. Approximate post time for the Kentucky Turf Cup is 5:59 Central. Best of luck.